Okay, there we are, along with me and my disheveled hair. Good evening.
And this is why you have an emotional support ghost. Yes, I'm having way too much fun with this.
There is no such thing as having too much fun, although you certainly have Nico's attention.
Hi,
Hey,
Nico.
buddy.
Nico need an emotional support ghost? Does Nico need an emotional support ghost?
He's a good boy.
Do I need an emotional support
He's a
ghost?
good boy.
Do I need to talk to your buddy?
Oh.
No? Okay. I'll put
No.
the little buddy back up here. Nico will probably knock it down at some point.
Yeah, now that lighting's perfect. Look at that. We look great.
Emotional support ghost.
And our emotional support guest, yes.
FYI, I'm
And our-
selling these now.
And our Halloween decor, which is in full effect outside. There will be pictures at some point.
I need to finish some lighting.
It's still a little bit of a work in progress, but we're getting there. But yeah, so yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Off you go.
Off I go. Well, geez,
You didn't write an intro this time.
I
so.
did not write an intro this time, but let's just say that we. I don't know why I'm taking
Pardon.
my glasses off.
I was going to say, you're going to need that.
I will need these eventually, but yeah, so we are going to a state that arguably does have every right to contest being kind of the heartbeat of the American Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
We may have got a certain speech right across the street,
Right,
but I
speech
mean,
right
the
across-
big battle first started
Speech
here.
across the street, and it the revolution effectively ended down the
Here.
road, down in Yorktown.
But first battle definitely
Yeah. So
up in that area.
yeah, so we're talking about, of course, Massachusetts.
Where I used to live.
A state that we do love to argue with on a regular basis about numerous things. The first Thanksgiving, stuff that happened during the American Revolution, all
Other
kinds of
things.
stuff. Other things which we won't get into tonight because most of it's political talk, and we just don't want to do
They
that.
don't cover that.
No, we don't do that. That's not our thing.
Unless they're dead and haunting someplace. We don't talk about it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so hope everybody's doing well tonight. But yeah, what do we got going on? Let's see. What do we have going on? We are coming up. We're almost halfway through September already, which means that we are almost out in October. It's basically October already. Let's just say it's already October. So it's already October. We have a lot of stuff coming up. We will say, before we do get to October, technically, we do have one more episode that we will be doing with y'all in 2 weeks. That's going to be Haunted Louisiana, 2 weeks from today. But when we do throw ourselves into October, we are going to have a crap load of stuff going on. So let's just say that not all of it is quite ready for prime time yet, as far as actually being announced. There's a lot of stuff kind of going and cooking at the moment, but when things are ready to be announced, we will be going ahead. We will be putting them out on Facebook, of course, and also we do recommend you subscribe to our newsletter.
Because announcements will happen there as well.
Yep, and for those that subscribe to our newsletter, we do try to go ahead and give things, sometimes, not everything, but give a little bit of an extra heads up about some of the stuff that we got going on. So if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, you can easily do that by going to hauntsofrichmond.com. There is a little tab at the top for newsletter. All you got to do is first name, last name, email address, and voila, you will be signed up for our newsletter. So yeah, other than that,
apparently I got a kitty pal tonight.
you do.
Hi, Vincent. Vincent apparently wants some cuddles.
And yes, Alex, the burr months have arrived. We love the burr months. I
Now,
love
if the
burr
weather
months.
would get with the program.
Hey, it's not too bad tonight.
It's not. We were actually outside on the porch. We were
Yeah.
porch sitting today. It was
We were-
lovely.
Porch sitting and drinking, and I am already several deep. So I am in.
And I am now apparently DD.
You're DD for the show tonight.
Hell,
Although I still have control over the. Apparently, I still have control over the chat. That word.
I was going to
Chat.
say, if you want to pass it this way, we can move that way. I can't move because I've got a cat.
Perfect excuse. But
Not the cat. We all know this. I don't want to be bit. He's already eyeing my fingertips.
That's yummy.
All right, let's get going.
All right, yeah. So let's get going. So, as I said, Haunted Massachusetts tonight. And so we're going to be covering the state of Massachusetts. And I know that for a long time we've been having special requests for Boston. We will be visiting one location that is very distinctly in the heart of Boston tonight, along with several that are kind of in the Boston Harbor area. So we will get a little taste of Boston tonight, and we have, of course, talked about Boston on some other episodes as well, and Massachusetts. We did a Haunted Salem episode once upon a time. Just 2 weeks ago, we did quite an extended chat about a couple of places that were haunted on Boston University. So yeah, we're gonna be diving right into Massachusetts for this evening, and what's on the bar tonight? I have made myself a crude old fashioned. I say that because it doesn't have quite all of the ingredients, but basically simple syrup, bitters, and bourbon. I did have that. So
I had my whiskey earlier. It was medicine.
Yep. I don't have any cherries or orange peel or anything like that, but I got a crude old fashioned here. So, anyways, we're going to go ahead and we are going to start in the town of Sudbury. So this is in the pastoral countryside, just to the west of Boston. And it's here that we find the Wayside Inn, a building that started as a modest two-room family residence in 1707 and officially became a working inn by 1716. The Wayside Inn has survived and flourished in its 300-plus years of hosting guests and travelers. Originally known as Howe's Tavern, this quaint inn was made famous when Henry Wadsworth Longfellow employed it as the setting for his book of poetry, Tales of a Wayside Inn, in 1863. Now, because of Longfellow's visit there and the book and whatnot, some people do refer to it as Longfellow's Wayside Inn, but the official name is the Wayside Inn. So, point of reference. Now, had it not been for Longfellow, the old inn might have never come to the attention of Henry Ford, the billionaire founder of the Ford Motor Company and admirer of Longfellow, who purchased the property in 1923. Ford's goal was to restore the inn and to turn it into a living history museum, adding a grist mill, an old red schoolhouse, a chapel, and more. With Ford's intervention, the Wayside Inn has survived to become the oldest operating inn in the United States. However, it's not just age and history that imbues this beautiful inn with legitimacy. Its tales of the Wayside Inn ghost. The inn had been built by the Howe family and was handed down through 4 generations. Lyman was the last in the line of the Howes to run the inn, but he never married or had children by the time of his death in 1861. Lyman was preceded in death by his sister, Jerusha. As a young woman growing up in the inn, Jerusha was known as the Belle of Sudbury, and her musical and artistic skills were renowned. She was known to sing beautifully in a thin and decorous voice, and she owned the first piano in town and put it to frequent use for visitors. Some say she still puts it to use today, with ghostly tunes played in the middle of the night. Little is known of Jerusha's romantic affairs in life, but there is a story that she was engaged to an Englishman. This Englishman sailed home to England to plan for a wedding, but was never heard from again. Whether he drowned at sea or simply abandoned Jerusha is unknown, but the Belle of Sudbury never married. She lived out her days at the inn by her brother's side, dying at the young age of 45 in 1842. Of course, as is the case with the best of ghost stories, it is said that she died of a broken heart. Jerusha is believed by many to be spending much of her afterlife in the bedroom she used during life, which is now room 9. Some guests in room 9 and next door in room 10 have reported smelling Jerusha's citrus perfume or feeling her sweep past them on the stairs. There have even been claims of being awakened by her touch or seeing her presence at the foot of the bed. These occurrences have made the room a charming and perhaps thrilling place to stay for those who wish to tempt fate with an encounter with a ghost. An odd and unique custom has developed over the years at the Wayside Inn, which is referred to as the Secret Drawer Society. Little notes, usually reporting on any Wayside Inn ghost encounters, are stuffed into little cracks, crevices, and drawers all throughout the room. Some of the notes, plucked from their hiding places, go back decades. Often, guests will spend hours searching the room and reading the secret testimonies of those who have come before. Rooms 9 and 10 are not the only haunted spaces at the Wayside Inn, nor is Jerusha the only spirit thought to linger here. Spirits have been spoken of at the inn dating back to before 1868, when some of the earliest activity was reported there. Amongst the notes to the hostess of the inn was a report of an incident where a ghost was reported half floating, half running through the room, known ever since as the Hobgoblin Room. The room had been used for dance parties and for large group meetings before eventually being converted into a bedroom, also known as the Old Hall. While Jerusha's story is certainly a tragic tale, it seems that some other guests to the Wayside Inn from centuries past may still be there, reveling in the beautiful and historic atmosphere. For those who like historic structures, haunted buildings, or both, the Wayside Inn is an idyllic place to stay over at during any haunted road trip. Set myself up with some tongue twisters in there.
Yes, you did.
Nah.
Alright, so we're going to move over to a sleepy little coastal town called Hull. It's on the southeast edge of Boston Harbor. Aside from its picturesque location, the seaside community is also renowned for the legend of the Hull Mystery Buggy. The first recording sighting of the Hull Mystery Buggy was recorded March 4th of 1902. Though it seems that people have been talking about the Mystery Buggy for far longer than that.
Don't mind the
We're
cats.
having zoomies. Alright, so, Captain Joshua James of Hull, an extremely practical and skeptical man, was out walking in Hull one evening around midnight when he encountered something confusing. As he walked on the road to Stony Beach, the sea captain reported seeing a buggy roll past him. Seeing a buggy wasn't anything unusual, rather it was that it was lacking, what it was lacking is what made it so chilling. It made no sound whatsoever against the bumpy road. The captain could see no one inside the buggy or in the driver's seat. Astonished by what he saw, the captain could only watch the buggy as it continued down the road, when something even more bizarre occurred. Instead of turning to the right towards Nantucket, or left towards Battery Heights, the buggy headed straight for the railroad track which runs along the top of the beach and disappeared on the rails. The captain rushed toward the tracks, expecting to find the buggy somewhere, thinking that the experience up to that point must have been a trick to his senses, but the buggy was nowhere to be found. The buggy had been spotted repeatedly over the years. It's always said to be sighted on the streets of Hull near midnight, and none have ever heard it make a sound. In addition to the modern vehicles in the roadways of Hull, several accidents have occurred after drivers have swerved to avoid the collision with the mysterious buggy. Well, no one's ever died or been seriously injured.
Problem?
Yes, they just moved the camera.
Oh,
Because it's on top of the rug that they're sliding on.
there we go.
It's still on the rug they're sliding
It is.
on.
We'll manage.
I'm just hoping the camera doesn't go falling over.
It won't go falling over.
Anyway,
Cats.
back to the buggy. So several accidents have occurred after drivers have swerved to avoid the collision with the mysterious buggy. While no one has died or been seriously injured from a buggy-related incident yet, there are still those that say the sighting of the buggy is a bad omen. Remember those stories about the death carriages and hearses and those things that we talked about? Might be related. The mystery buggy isn't alone on its last late-night wanderings of Hull. Many have also encountered a strange woman wandering the streets in otherwise deserted parts of town at all hours of darkness. Those who have tried to pursue or speak to the woman have always found their efforts to be in vain, as the woman will speed up her gait to match anyone trying to follow her. Aside from matching their walking pace, the woman never makes any other acknowledgement of those trying to contact her, even if they call out after her. For those who have been passed by the strange woman, they can get a closer look at her when they realize she has no distinguishable features. Though her stature is described as that of a normal adult woman, sometimes she can be seen walking in the precipice of Battery Heights. Some people will watch in astonishment as she suddenly just vanishes into nothing. I don't need to go find these two.
No, but they sound so delightful.
We can be inside, behind a window as the buggy goes by. I'm okay with that. I don't need to be out driving with it.
That's fair. So, we're not going to be going far. Our next stop is just a short jump across the water into Boston Harbor, about a mile from Hull, where we can find George's Island. This island is dominated by Fort Warren, a granite pentagonal-shaped fortification that was constructed over the course of several decades, starting in 1833. The fort would officially enter service in 1850, though construction continued until 1861, when it was completed just in time for the Civil War. The finished fortification included facilities such as a barracks, an ammunition magazine, storehouses, a hospital, a kitchen, mess rooms, jail cells, and a battery of heavy guns that faced the sea. During the Civil War, Fort Warren was used as prison for Confederate soldiers and disloyal citizens. Alexander Hamilton Stevens, Vice President of the Confederate States of America, was the most famous person imprisoned at the fort. The island was an inhospitable place, and Confederate soldiers found the cold weather unbearable in comparison to their southern homesteads. During winter, Union soldiers had purportedly seen mysterious shadows when patrolling the lonely beaches of the island, and such occurrences are likely what led to the most prominent ghost story to become ingrained in the legacy of Fort Warren. A young woman robed in black is believed to be the spirit of Miss Andrew Lanier, the wife of a Confederate soldier that was imprisoned at Fort Warren in 1861. Her attire earned her the name of the Lady in Black. Her story was recorded by Edward Rowe Snow, a 20th century local historian. The story goes something like this. Miss Lanier received a letter from her husband that he had been imprisoned at Fort Warren. She was compelled to free him, making an epic journey from Georgia to Hull, Massachusetts, and the home of a Confederate sympathizer. Miss Lanier systematically observed the fort with a spyglass, and on a stormy night in January 1862 had rowed across to George's Island and went ashore. She cut her hair short and dressed as a man and brought with her an old pistol and a small pickaxe. She made her way to the dungeon cells and from outside the fort signaled to her husband by whistling an obscure southern tune, to which he signaled back. Miss Lanier was able to squeeze through the slit window of his cell and was then hidden by the Confederate soldiers. With the use of the pickaxe, the soldiers contrived to tunnel to the center of the fort and then overtake the guards and obtain weapons. The tunnel took several weeks to dig, and on the eve of finishing the tunnel, a sharp blow of the pick had alerted the guards. The alarm was sounded and the tunnel quickly discovered. As each of the Confederate soldiers was removed from the tunnel, a tally was taken. When all of the prisoners were accounted for, Miss Lanier leapt from the tunnel and captured a Union officer with the old pistol. Miss Lanier succeeded in surprising the officer, but he slapped the pistol from her hand. The pistol went off and the bullet struck and killed her husband. As punishment for her deeds, Mrs. Lanier was condemned to death by hanging. Her final request was to be given female clothing, and a search of the fort produced nothing but some old black robes. She was executed in these robes and buried on George's Island. According to King's Handbook of Boston Harbor by M.F. Sweetster, published in 1883, the only notable prison escapes occurred after 1862. In 1863, a daring escape was made by 6 Confederate soldiers. They squeezed through the slit holes in the granite walls and made their way to the beach. 2 of the soldiers attempted to swim to Lovell's Island, but the tide was going out and they were swept out to sea. A second notable escape was of 2 soldiers that constructed a crude raft and made it to Lovell's Island. From there, they obtained a small boat and sailed out of the harbor. The pair were later recaptured by a Coast Guard cutter. The Lady in Black is said to roam the grounds of the fort to this day, and over time, sightings of her have only increased in frequency. Her dark and heavy robes sway in the harbor's breeze, an ominous and intimidating sight for any who cross her path. Her fate is considered tragic and ironic by many, as not only was she unable to free her husband in life, but she seems to be eternally trapped at the fort in death.
I like that story.
It's a good story.
And they're off again. You okay?
Sure.
You're just filthy.
No, I think I'm just...
Not reading properly.
I'm good.
Okay. Alright, so we're going to do one more fort-related tale from the area of Hull, and this is from Fort Revere Park. It's a military landmark that has a front row seat to the American Revolution. This fort had earned its haunting reputation for some of the grim events that occurred there during the years of its service. Events that stand in stark contrast to the beautiful landscape that it presents today. According to an interpretive signage on site, Telegraph Hill was considered as the site for the fort as early as 1633. It was first officially fortified during the Revolutionary War to protect Boston Harbor. General Joseph Palmer created a star-shaped fortress for which Fort Independence was named. By 1777, the fort had 15 guns placed in low walls or parapets. It was also a military hospital. During the American Revolution, the French Marines that were stationed there at the fort were there to aid the American cause. In addition, 200 French soldiers captured by the British in Nova Scotia were transferred there in exchange for English prisoners. Unfortunately, they were plagued by smallpox. Nearly 200 of them died and were buried beside the fort. The exact location of the burial remains undetermined. Expansions continued through 1780, but the fort was deactivated in 1782. In 1797, it lost its name when Fort Independence was transferred to Castle Island. Hull's fort may have been known as Allerton Battery at that time, and it was sometimes known as the French Fort. By the War of 1812, it had fallen out of use and remained dormant for nearly a century. It was renamed in honor of Paul Revere and revived in 1897 as part of the Endicott program, which fortified Boston Harbor. Additional batteries were added to the fort from 1898 to 1906. A 120-foot tall water tower was constructed on the site in 1903 as one of the earliest steel-reinforced concrete water towers in the United States, and probably likely the first one in New England. It could hold 118,000 gallons, plus there was an observation deck at the top useful for spotting warships. The same site had been home to preceding watch showers, perhaps as early as 1673. Troops had been stationed there during the Spanish-American War, and the fort was further expanded after the United States entered World War I. It was also fortified with temporary structures for the beginning of World War II, but decommissioned in 1947 and turned over to the Commonwealth. By then, the fort had grown to 77 acres. The state kept the site of the original fort, but auctioned off the rest, with Hull purchasing 8 acres for a cemetery, and the remainder was developed privately. Now it's part of Hull Historic District and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, leading up to the United States bicentennial in 1976, Fort Revere was partially restored as a historic site with amphitheaters installed within the old fort walls. 3 memorials were established that year, courtesy of France, to commemorate the French-American cooperation during the Revolutionary War. Ever since then, massive loss of life during the Revolutionary War, rumors of eerie occurrences have plagued the fort. Later, soldiers stationed at the fort began to comment on unexplained noises that seemed to come from beneath the fort structures, even where no basement level existed. Strange whispers have been reported in the tunnels below the fort, and some of the most frequently heard stories from modern visitors include large shadows that loom in doorways or even rush along interior walls with no apparent source. In the World War II era, soldiers at the fort sometimes reported hearing the sounds of men speaking French in the area around the exterior of the structure. Some even claimed to have seen what they described as the glow and the smell of tobacco pipes in unoccupied rooms. Of course, skeptics will be close to point out that Fort Revere is full of long stone tunnels, cavernous stone rooms. Sounds are bound to bounce around in these cave-like structures. With over half a century of abandonment, the likelihood of noisy animals have been taking up residence in the fort is also kind of high. Nevertheless, modern visitors have a harder time explaining the uncanny shadows that at times seem to follow individuals through the tunnels. One visitor recalled their experience at Fort Revere as the follows. This morning, I stumbled upon Fort Revere. I had no previous experience at this place, nor prior knowledge until I looked up the history. I parked my car and was at first curious about the fenced-in monument. As I approached it, I noticed the fence was largely in disrepair. In fact, I was able to step right over it and approach the padlocked door to the monument. At first, there was silence, and then I put my ear up to the door and heard sort of a steady moaning. I thought, could be some sort of trapped animal inside the monument. I have no idea how it would have gotten inside, however. This continued for at least 60 seconds, and then I decided to knock on the door. All of a sudden, I heard footsteps rush down what I assumed is a metal staircase inside. Then it stopped suddenly. I was so freaked out, I ran back towards the parking lot. I have no explanation what happened to me. Another individual recalled, I've been going to Fort Revere for over 18 years to meditate. I've been going there to find a quiet space to watch the ocean without busy beach walkers. One day, I'm sitting there alone, looking out at the ocean view from the hood of my car, when I was startled to hear a large, heavy metal ring that sit on the cement indents in the wall bang very hard. That happens when there are a couple of people playing around with them, but I was alone. I was on top of the hill for a while and could see all the rings from where I was sitting. Not a soul was around. I went down and played with them, but they were not easy to move, and I don't think the wind could have done that. I've been hundreds of times since, all the times of the year, all the weathers, all the times of the day. I've never had that experience again. I often hear voices when I assume I'm alone, but I often question that as paranoia. These combined beauties and eeriness of the fort make it a place that you should definitely put on the short list of places to go and visit, especially for history buffs and seekers of the paranormal alike. Although you might want to brush up on your French if you want to talk to these ghosts.
So I always do love to point out a good video game tie-in.
Yeah.
If you ever have played Fallout 4, Fort Revere,
Yep.
once known as Fort Independence, is the castle in Fallout 4.
Yep.
So you
Watch
can,
out for those Mirelurks.
Yes, the Mirelurks. You always gotta watch out for the Mirelurks.
And I mean, they actually do have the sound of Mirelurks on metal scaffolding when you're doing battle there.
Yeah. So yes, but yeah. So it's funny. It's always the Mirelurks that tie into our video game related stories.
I mean,
Because
it's always where the Mirelurks are that they're haunted that they put in the video games.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, because it was Fallout 3
With
Point Lookout, which was of course completely, saturated with Mirelurks. But yes,
if there's a Mirelurk queen at the fort or at the castle.
If you're unfamiliar with the Fallout video games, I realize I'm completely talking as if everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. If you're unfamiliar with it, Mirelurks are basically mutated human-sized crabs.
Or bigger.
Or bigger.
They do bigger. If it's the
very
queen, she's massive.
Oh, the queen's absolutely massive.
She's massive. She's the size of a hot air balloon.
Yep. Yeah.
Just saying.
I think she looks a little bit more like a crawdad than a crab, but
She's still big.
Big.
She's
very
big. And then there are the ones that are infused with radioactive material and they glow green and click.
Yep. So, anyways,
No crab cakes from that one.
No, you do not want those crab cakes. You can eat the crab cakes in the video game, you will absorb radiation damage. Anyways, I digress.
Unless you want to be Spider-Man. Or Hulk.
Carrying on, we are going to move away from Boston Harbor for just a little bit here, and we are going to go to the west, over all the way to the Connecticut River, where we can find the city of Springfield, Massachusetts. Here on Worthington Street is an institution known as Theodore's. Theodore's has garnered a following for several things: the blues played on its stage, the barbecue smoked in its kitchen, and the pool hall upstairs. It's said to be the oldest continuously operating billiards establishment in the country, dating back to 1902. In recent years, Theodore's has come to be known for another reason: its resident spirits. Some employees and a few patrons have heard and felt a presence wandering the landmark in the heart of the city's entertainment district. There were enough of those reports going around that the producers of Ghost Hunters stopped by to check things out in 2008. They picked up some noises in the basement and also some readings on heat sensors. Not enough to form any definitive conclusions about who might be lingering on there, but it did indicate that there may in fact be something to the reports of unusual activity. The current owners of Theodore's, Murakowski and Wepler, don't really consider themselves to be believers, but they also can't completely dismiss the idea either, as they have each had their own inexplicable encounters. Wepler recalled, "We were downstairs counting out the money one time. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. A few staff members from Theodore's and the 2 bartenders from up here came down. We heard someone walking around, and we also heard some stools moved across the floor. We thought the door was unlocked and someone had gotten up there. But when we went to investigate, there was no one there. And all the chairs had been set up on the tables for the next day." Murakowski said, "I've never seen anything, but I've been here when some odd things that just can't be explained have happened. Like things crashing, and then there's no mess. And footsteps when there's no one in the building." While the partners generally work to keep business moving forward, they do have some mementos of the past, including a dust-covered framed photograph. Referencing the photo, Wepler noted, "That's the Smith bowling team. The picture shows half a dozen men standing and sitting around some bowling pins. The men practiced on the 4th and 5th floors of the building, where there were alleys more than half a century ago." Wepler noted that some of the ghost stories about the building involved hearing balls rolling down a lane, even though the alleys had been closed for decades. Some of the modern-day employees have been so unnerved by the sounds of the bowling balls after closing that they've literally fled from the building and called it a night. That said, Wepler and Murakowski have taken it in stride. For his part, Wepler doesn't think that spirits, if they exist, will impact business for better or worse. He says it will just become a part of the charm or vibe at Theodore's.
I gotta tell you, their menu looks amazing.
Is that going to be on our next trip back up to Boston?
Probably.
Even though it's been a hot minute.
Been a hot minute, yes.
We haven't. It's been over a decade.
Yeah.
We haven't been there in a good long time, which is kind of a shame considering we
got friends up there.
We got friends up there, and we can get a direct flight that would get us there in like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Okay, so when are we leaving?
I don't know. I can go ticket shopping now. You can take the rest of the show.
Not with this.
No,
place.
never mind. Moving on.
Alright, so now we're going to move to the northwest corner of the state near the borders with New York State and Vermont, and this is the city of North Adams. Here we find that Albert Charles Houghton, president of the Arnold Print Works and the first mayor of North Adams. He built himself a house in 1890, shortly before his term as mayor concluded. It was his 3rd term in North Adams. It was the most extravagant, reflecting his wealth and his status. It was built in a neoclassical revival style and had strong Greek features, along with an eclectic array of influences from many diverse sources. The mansion's roof was made with a Spanish tile. There is a formal garden in the rear, which was often used for parties to raise money for the North Adams Hospital. The Houghtons moved in around 1900. The family then consisted of Mr. Houghton, his wife Cordelia, and their youngest surviving daughter Mary, who was then 23 years old.
You okay?
He's gonna knock things over.
He's a cat. What do you expect?
He's our wrecking ball. Anyway, another daughter, Laura, had died as an infant, and 3 others had lived to grow up, marry, and produce their own children. In 1905, when Mr. Houghton was 61 years old, his health started to fail. At that point, Mary resolved that she would never wed, but devote her life to taking care of her father. A manic workaholic with a passion for business, Mr. Houghton did not, in fact, retire, only cut back, dividing his time between his APW sales office in New York City and in North Adams, leaving the major decisions to be decided by his son-in-law, William A. Gall. In the spring of 1914, the Houghton's invested in their first car, a 7-passenger Pierce Arrow touring car, and sent their longtime chauffeur, John Wilders, to learn to drive it. On August 1st of 1914, Mr. Houghton and his daughter Mary decided to go to Bennington, Vermont for a pleasure drive. Mrs. Houghton decided to stay home. They were accompanied by Dr. and Mrs. Robert Houghton of New York, and with Wilders at the wheel, the car left the Houghton mansion at 9 a.m., and at 9:30 it was in Pownell, Vermont, heading up what is now Oak Hill Road. The road was under repair, and a team of horses was parked on the right-hand side. Wilders went around them on the left at about 12 miles per hour. On the left shoulder, the car tilted, went down a steep embankment, rolling over 3 times before coming to a rest in an upright position in a farmer's field. Everybody, except Mary Houghton, was thrown out of the car. The men all escaped with minor injuries such as cuts, scrapes, bruises, and minor fractures. The women weren't so lucky. Mrs. Houghton was killed almost instantly when the car rolled over her. Mary Houghton was hurt just as badly and died of her injuries at 3 p.m. in the North Adams Hospital. Expected to survive, Mr. Houghton was taken home, but he died 10 days later. It was said he died of a broken heart. The investigator for the state of Vermont exonerated Wilders of all wrongdoing, blaming the accident instead on the south shoulder of the road. But Wilders still blamed himself, and at 5 a.m. on August 2nd, he shot himself in the cellar at the Houghton barn with a horse pistol. The grim events are the basis for these hauntings that have occurred in the house ever since. People have reported hearing disembodied voices of Mary, her father, and John Wilders. Shadowy figures have been seen roaming the hallways, and the visitors would often remark on a heavy, sad feeling that descends upon them as soon as they step into Mary's old. Still eerier are the tales of the spirit of a little girl that is seen in the basement. Before Houghton Mansion was built, another home actually sat on this property. When the structure was demolished, the original basement remained, and the Houghton Mansion was built on top of it. The Houghtons themselves were reported to have remarked on a strange feeling in the basement. Following the crash, one of the 2 surviving Houghton daughters, Florence, moved into the house with her husband, William, and made the mansion their home, after looking after Mrs. Houghton until her death in 1916. They resided in the house until William retired in 1926. Florence and her sister sold it to the Freemasons in 1926, and the Freemasons did away with the formal garden and constructed their lodge building in its place. The Houghton Mansion still faces Church Street as a facade for the lodge, but with some minor changes from the original appearance. With the home's haunting reputation having already been firmly established, the Freemasons would open the house to paranormal enthusiasts for a fee. It's been featured on some of the prominent paranormal TV programs over the years. There are 3 rules, however, for these rentals: no alcohol, no drugs, and no Ouija boards. We applaud them for all.
I second that.
During the events, guests have get off the table. He's chewing on something.
I got it.
Sorry. During events, guests have reported footsteps and voices when no one else is in sight. Flickering lights, loud knocking, ghostly shadows have also been witnessed. People have been touched on tours and during investigations when they're alone in the room. One frequent visitor and investigator of the mansion was James Cricket Woodonsky. who estimated that he spent the night in the mansion 13 different times. During his visits with his friends there, he would frequently witness things that they just simply could not explain. On their first day, James and his friends were together, and they saw a lantern-like light float up the stairs and heard creaking, but didn't see anybody walking before the light abruptly vanished. Further investigation into the sighting revealed that they were in fact quite alone in the structure. On more eventful nights, James had a 40-degree gust of air in the middle of the summer. He heard a girlish giggle and had been scratched on the back of his neck. His friend reported feeling a tug on his ponytail. While a little unnerving for some, it was enough to bring James back and his friends from time to time again. Despite the Freemasons' best efforts at fundraising and maintaining the building, it eventually proved to be too much for them to keep up with, and the Freemasons were forced to sell the building to a private developer in 2017. It has since been closed to the public. We hope one day to hear good news that it is beautiful and the historic structure in North Adams is restored to its former grandeur and will be open again for visitors and the paranormal enthusiasts to enjoy. But no words yet.
Yep. Time will tell. I went and I looked, and as of right now, it seems that it's
still closed to the public.
Yeah. It's just looking like any other, large mansion-like house on the map. Doesn't appear to be anything in particular set up there. We neglected to mention at the beginning of the episode, as you may have noticed, we are alone tonight. Our friend and guide, Lee, was not able to make it this evening, but Lee is online now. So hopefully all will be well, and Lee will be able to come back and join us here on set. On set.
The kitty cats are now sulking in the seat you normally sit in, Lee, by the way.
Yes. They're...
Now that Zoomies are over. And they're been chastised, and our friend the ghost is falling again.
That didn't help. You can just hold the ghost. He's cute. You can hold him.
He's got a nose. I made a nose on him.
I like him. Really cute.
I think I need to go make noses in the other ones.
It'd be a good idea. He's cute. And in any case, yes, he's one of a small army.
Yes, as I said, this is my new crafting project, and I am selling them now.
Yep. Because everybody needs an emotional support ghost. Now, anyways, not quite done yet. We still have a couple more stories for you this evening. And we're going to take a short hour's drive back to the east, which will land us in the city of Greenfield. On the northern outskirts of town is one of the city's most notable historic landmarks, the Eunice Williams Covered Bridge. This beautiful bridge marks the site where the life of a young mother was abruptly cut short just hours after the Deerfield massacre. Nowadays, legend holds that Mrs. Williams never left the place where she died. In the darkness of the pre-dawn hours of February 29th, 1704, 300 warriors from the French army and their allies from the Abenaki and Mohawk tribes crept into the town of Deerfield, just to the south of Greenfield. The French and British were in the midst of the Queen Anne's War for control of the continent. The little town barely knew what had hit it before the houses were plundered and burned. Livestock were killed, 56 residents were murdered, and 112 were captured. Those 112, or those of them who would make it, that is, would spend the next few months hiking to Canada. Among the 112 captured were the Reverend John Williams, 5 of his 7 children, and his wife, Eunice. Eunice, though, was in no shape to make the trek to Canada. She had given birth just a few short weeks prior. The baby did not survive the attack. Eunice collapsed while the group was crossing the Green River, the first obstacle on the way to Canada. The warriors were instructed to strike down anyone unable to keep up, and falling on the first leg of the trip put her in this category. She was struck down by tomahawk not far from her husband and surviving children. Eventually, John and 4 of the 5 children reunited and returned. One child, the young girl named after her mother, chose to stay with the natives. Eunice replaced one of the girls in their tribe who had died of smallpox. She was loved and taken care of by her new tribe and took on the name Marguerite. I can't try to pronounce it. It is a Native American name that is about 20 characters long, and I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it.
He does not want to butcher it.
I do not want to butcher it, and yeah.
It starts with a K. Marguerite K. We're going to leave it at that.
Yep. So, anyway, she did abandon her English language and was baptized Catholic and married a native man. Even after her brothers and father made repeated attempts to convince her to come back home, she still refused. The Reverend John Williams wrote of his family's ordeal once he was able to return home, and the story became a fixture in the legacy of life on the frontier in the early 1700s. When the decision was made to construct a covered bridge in the area where Eunice had been murdered, it was an easy decision for the community to name the bridge for the woman who had lost her life at that crossing so many years before. Some say that Mrs. Williams haunts the river by the bridge in remembrance of the violent death she faced. Struck down by tomahawk in icy waters while her family watched just hours after her newborn and second youngest were torn from her arms and killed. Others say that she appears to passers-by whom she mistakes for her family. After all these years, perhaps she still waits for them to come back for her. Still, others say she is haunted by the fate of her daughter, the one who bore her very name and who abandoned her family and the religion her family valued so much. Whatever her reason for returning, locals claim to have spotted Eunice near the waters under the bridge and floating around a nearby dam. Sometimes she may show herself on the bridge itself, perhaps thinking that those who visit the structure may have some of the answers she so desperately desires. The Eunice Williams covered bridge has been rebuilt and renovated several times over the years. It was rebuilt in 1972 after a fire destroyed the original from the 1870s. Then it was closed to vehicle traffic in 2002 because of natural wear and tear on the structure. Hurricane Irene took a major toll on it in 2011, and it was closed to foot traffic soon after. In November of 2014, after substantial renovations, it was reopened to both vehicle and foot traffic, making it accessible for you to go visit there today if you should so desire. Okay. Alright.
Sorry folks, I've been battling a sinus infection and apparently all this reading is not making my throat happy.
That's right. One story left for this evening.
We're going back to Boston.
Back to Boston, to the very heart of Boston, where we can find the Omni Parker House Hotel. Now, the Omni Parker House Hotel opened in 1855, making it the oldest hotel in Boston and the longest continuously operating hotel in the United States. Its prestige has brought generations of notable people through its doors. Writers including Emerson, Thoreau, and Longfellow regularly met here to discuss their work. Baseball greats such as Babe Ruth and Ted Williams enjoyed the hotel's many amenities. Political visitors included Ulysses S. Grant, FDR, JFK, Colin Powell, and many others who gathered for meetings, press conferences, and power breakfasts here. Then there have been the performers, such as modern stars like Ben Affleck and Stevie Nicks. Bon?
You said Bon.
Excuse me. Ben Affleck and Stevie Nicks. Sorry, tongue-tied. And then taking a step back in time, we have Judy Garland and James Dean.
All the way back to the Booth brothers, Edwin and John Wilkes.
Yes, that John Wilkes Booth. Yes. He did stay there at that very hotel.
As we said, it's been around a while.
Yes. Now, before all of these illustrious and infamous people could pass through the hotel's doors, though, it all started with one man and a classic rags to riches story. Harvey Parker, a 20-year-old farmhand from Maine, arrived in Boston Harbor in 1925 with less than $1 in his pocket. He found honest employment, first as a stableman and later as a coachman, and would frequently have his lunch in a cafe on Court Square. By 1832, he had earned enough money to purchase the cafe, renaming it Parker's Restaurant. It quickly drew the attention of businessmen, lawyers, and newspapermen for its excellent food and service. He took on a business partner, John Mills, in 1847, and together they took on the ambitious project of opening a hotel that would be known as Parker's, just down the street from the Massachusetts State House in 1855. This 5-story Italianate-style structure featured gleaming marble, thick carpets, and all of the amenities that a well-to-do traveler could desire. The rest is history. With so much to offer, it is of little surprise that some people decided to never check out of the Omni Parker House Hotel. Amongst the tales coming from this storied establishment are many haunting tales, some of which date back to the hotel's opening in 1855, starting with the man, Harvey Parker himself. A large portrait of him hangs in the hotel's restaurant to this day. Some have reported an eerie glow emanating from the portrait, which some take as a sign of him checking in on the ongoing hospitality of the establishment that still bears his name.
I still think that's creepy. It reminds me of peeper holes in paintings.
Yeah, there is that.
Just saying.
It's very, very much Haunted Mansion-esque.
Yes.
I like it. Anyways, apart from his portrait, Parker also seems to frequent the 10th floor of the hotel, a part of the structure that was added near the end of Parker's life. He is believed to be the apparition that has appeared to some of the guests over the years, frequently wearing a stovepipe hat and smelling of liquor and tobacco. He was a friendly and agreeable spirit, as he reportedly appeared in front of a mother and daughter who was sleeping in room 1012. He grinned at the girl, who smiled back, before vanishing before her. Another unusual experience will often take place on elevator number 1 when it is passing the 3rd floor. At least it's supposed to pass the 3rd floor. The elevator will often stop there without being called, and some like to attribute this to stage actress Charlotte Cushman. Charlotte had taken up residence in the hotel, but she was not well. She was battling breast cancer and ultimately succumbed to pneumonia in her 3rd floor room as a result of the disease in February of 1876. While she no longer needed to battle illness, it seems she may not be at rest, as she frequently calls the elevator to take her about the hotel to take advantage of its offerings. Also on the 3rd floor is the room where Charles Dickens resided from 1867 to 1868 whilst on his American lecture tour. His portrait still hangs in the Dickens room on the 3rd floor, and the hotel also still displays the mirror that Dickens looked into as he practiced for his first public reading of A Christmas Carol. A staff member once had a creepy encounter with the mirror when he tried to clean condensation off of it and found that it kept coming back as if someone was actively breathing on the mirror. The staff member was so disturbed that he hasn't touched the mirror since. Some other bizarre occurrences have happened throughout the hotel. Notably, room 303 was permanently closed and turned into a storage closet after too many guests complained of the smell of whiskey and the sounds of laughter in the room. The leading theory is that the disturbances were caused by a businessman who committed suicide in the room back in 1949. Then there is the ghost in the storage closet on the mezzanine level. A disembodied voice has been heard emanating from this space, and it is believed to be the ghost of a former employee who liked to hide in there to sleep off a night of drinking. Whilst I understand that the employee might have considered it his space, I can't imagine haunting a storage closet when there are so many other fine corners to camp out in at the Omni Parker House Hotel. These are just a few of the spectral tales from this beautiful hotel, and if you want to explore it yourself, we would suggest going in the slow season, which would be the winter months. Peak season, like right now, will set you back over $500 a night at a minimum. Speaking from experience, Boston is a lovely place to visit in the winter, and you can stay at this landmark for less than half the price when the weather gets cold out. So,
Woohoo.
I think that our next winter trip up to Boston, it might be our place to stay.
That sounds good to me.
Because the summer months, when it's $500 a night, or more, much more sometimes, no thank you. But let me see. Yep, Omni Parker. Yep. Patrick, you are so good at looking this stuff up. Oh, Alex. My family immigrated to Boston a few generations back, so we have some great memories there. It's such an incredible city.
It is.
I am very inclined to agree. Boston is a fantastic city to visit.
Yeah, I actually lived there for a couple of months after I graduated with my bachelor's degree before I went back for my master's. I loved living there. It was just expensive.
You live just off the Orange Line?
I live just off the Orange Line, yeah.
Yep, just on the west end of town.
Yep.
So, they do have a very, very good metro system.
Yes, they do.
Which, historic as well.
Yeah.
I think it's the Green Line.
The Green Line is the oldest one.
The Green Line's the oldest one, and it's still in like the style of like almost an old trolley.
Yeah.
Runs. Still runs.
Still has to have snow cleared off of it because it's one of the outdoor ones.
And I do also I did also love the fact that there were a couple of the stations where you actively had to cross the tracks.
Yes.
Like look both ways
because there's trains coming.
Don't step in front of the subway car or in this case the Green Line trolley car.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. I mean, they have that fantastic transit system can get you just about any corner of Boston. Beautiful city, lots of history.
Lots of good places to go and eat.
Oh,
and
yes.
Go and see. Go explore.
Yeah, which we have to go back and do so much more of that. I mean, we went to the aquarium. We did Paul Revere's house. Paul Revere's house, but there's so much more that we didn't do. Quincy Market, Faneuil Hall.
Yep.
Wait, did we do Faneuil Hall?
We did not go in it that day because they were renovating.
That's right.
They had an event something.
We saw it from the outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, so much to go do up there, and we stayed down in Quincy at our friend Mike's apartment. He was living in Quincy, which was right off the Red Line. So very convenient.
That's right. He was the Red Line. My sister was off the the opposite side of the Red Line.
Yes. So when we stayed at Mike's place and went to visit your sister when she's living there,
literally went from one end to the other.
We board the Red Line for like an hour, all going one end to the other, and then hopping on a bus from that extension. Was it Braintree?
Yeah. Braintree.
All the way at the end of the Red Line, Braintree, and hopping on a bus for a half an hour to get to your sister's place.
Yes. But you also went to see Salem when we were up there.
That's right, we did. We took the commuter train out to Salem, which was also very convenient. Even where the metro or their subway ends, you have the commuter rails that go that much further. Yeah. So, great place to visit. Strongly recommend it. And from Richmond, it is very easy to get to. Yeah. Several direct flights going up there every single day. So
we went to the original Sam Adams Brewery, which is now their testing facility. And ate at a hole-in-the-wall place, best chicken soup we ever had.
They did not speak English.
No, they did not.
It was a Spanish establishment and had the best chicken soup I've ever had in my life.
It was like chicken and rice and veggies, and it was fantastic the whole day.
The chicken was on the bone.
Yeah.
It was on the bone chicken.
So it was bone broth.
And it was so rich and flavorful, and it was the only thing that we could order because of the language barrier.
Yes, we saw it come out. We were like, we want that.
Yes, and they understood that and got us a couple of good bowls of that chicken soup, and that was quite memorable. Mm-hmm. But yes,
it's so good. I love hole-in-the-wall places like that.
But yeah, definitely a place that we could get up to for a long weekend, just because it's so easy to fly to. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
We digress. As we always do. We always digress. This was one of our shorter scripts, and we have still almost rambled on for an hour, or for a full hour, so, oh, no, that was Patrick, with Alex.
What?
Patrick asks Alex if they have maintained the Boston accent.
Alright, so here's a fun story about the Park the Car on Harvard Yard. One of my locals at the coffee shop
Those socks.
very much has a Boston accent. He is not from Boston at all, by the way. But he went up to visit Boston, and he actually found Harvard Yard, and he's filming, and he showed me the video today, of him saying, so for all those who want to park the car on Boston Yard, this is where you park it. It's for all you rich folks. And it went deep southern at that point in time. I'm like, oh, so you finally got out of the Boston accent that you can't own.
Yeah. The accent is a very, very real thing.
It is. It's hilarious. We nickname him Boston because he sounds like he's from Southie. And he's not. I don't know where he picked up these accents, but it's funny.
Oh, thank you, Alex. I need that little laugh to go ahead and cap off our evening.
Yes, and I have gone to Faneuil Hall, or not Faneuil Hall. I've gone to the Green Monster and seen a game there at the original.
Oh, I missed the original.
Well, before they renovated it.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say they haven't moved stadiums.
No, but before they renovated it.
Okay, all right.
Which is another location in Fallout.
It is, yes.
Yes.
It's the diamond, the main.
Yeah.
They're the main settlements there. The first big settlement you go
Yes.
find there in Fallout 4, because well,
So.
of course.
But yeah, have not gone to a Bruins game.
No.
We'd have to have Mike with us.
We'd have to go incognito.
Yeah, we would not be allowed to wear anybody else's jerseys.
No. Anyways, but yes. So that, again, was our last tour for this evening.
I was looking up what we're doing next time.
Louisiana.
Louisiana, yes.
Louisiana's in 2 weeks, and...
Which is 3.
Yeah, Witches episode volume 3 is going to be in the middle of October.
Yes.
So as is typical with October, we're just going to be doing one October episode because October is insane. But we love October. So if you want to go ahead and get your October fix with us, go check out the website. We do still have plenty of availability for the public tours that we're offering in October, but that
private is almost full.
Private tours are almost full, and the public tour availability won't last long.
No.
In our experience, starting the second weekend, which is going to be of course, kicking that off with a Friday the 13th this year. Second weekend through the end of October, Fridays and Saturday nights in particular will typically sell out sometimes 2 to 3 days in advance. Excuse me. So
get your tickets early.
Get your tickets
Don't
early.
wait till last minute.
And availability on our first weekend is going to be extremely limited because we are doing a large semi-private event for Virginia Commonwealth University the first weekend on October.
Yeah, I'm the only guide available that weekend for the public.
For the public tour. So it is going to be
a busy weekend.
It is going to be a busy weekend, but we also have some fantastic special events that are going to be running that month. A couple of which we have still yet to announce. We will get around to announcing them when the time comes.
Where they are going to be located, that is where they are going to announce first, and then we will share.
Yep, because we are partnering up. So we're waiting on our partners to go ahead and pull the trigger on that, and then we will release that information to y'all. We have mentioned repeatedly Nightmare Weekend. That is run by the GalaxyCon organization. They're coming to Richmond for a whole weekend of spooky stuff.
Yep.
The 13th, 14th, and 15th. We are going to have
a table, and we will be giving 3 panels.
Yep, so please come check us out there. That is going to be a fun-filled weekend.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the tours that we're doing each night that weekend. So crazy, crazy busy weekend. But yeah, it's... spooky season's here, folks.
It's here.
It's here. So
it has not just thrown up on my front yard. It is here.
We're very much looking forward to it. But in the meantime, we do have a couple more weeks of September, which is traditionally quiet for us, which, that said, can be very beneficial for y'all if you want to come on out and on a, generally speaking, what would most likely be a less busy tour.
I will also say that we usually sponsor the St. Benedict's Oktoberfest. It is this coming weekend.
Yes,
We're not sponsoring this year because Chris and I are going to be out of town.
But
definitely go and check them out if you haven't, and then come check us out with a tour. We'll help you walk off the beer and the food.
Exactly. So yeah, we're a little disappointed that we weren't able to do the St. Benedict's thing this year, but still very much would like to encourage people to go on out and support them. It's gonna
have a pretzel and beer for me, please.
Yes. it's going to be our first year missing the festivities in like
Since we've been going.
for a long time. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we
ignored the year that COVID happened.
Yeah, COVID aside, we've been there every year for a number of years now. So
go support them for us.
Yep. So go check that out, and yeah.
With that, we will see you in 2 weeks. I hope you all have a good night and a good spooky start of your season.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.